powerful act of courage. Soldier shows evacuation procedure in central London drill. The streets, usually filled with hurried footsteps and the constant hum of traffic, seemed to hold their breath. Buses idled at stops with passengers peering out of the windows, noticing clusters of soldiers moving with purpose along the pavements. Emergency vehicles, usually reserved for sudden crises, lined certain streets in neat rows, their bright colors and bold markings immediately drawing the attention of early commuters. Among the soldiers was Sergeant Daniel Hayes. He had been in the army for more than a decade, and every day had taught him the importance of calm, precision, and readiness. Hayes was not just another soldier. He was known among his peers for his composure under pressure and his natural ability to guide people through challenging situations. On this day, his role was crucial. He was responsible for overseeing a large-scale safety drill in central London, designed to prepare both civilians and responders for emergency evacuations. While drills happened often, this one was special. It was public in the heart of a bustling city, and the eyes of officials and citizens alike were watching. As Hayes walked through the streets, he observed the city waking up. A group of early morning joggers passed by, their feet rhythmically tapping against the pavement. Shopkeepers began opening their doors, stretching and greeting the few customers who had ventured out. Bicyclists weaved carefully between parked cars, alert to the unusual presence of uniformed personnel. Some pedestrians stopped, curiosity written across their faces, as they tried to understand the purpose of this sudden flurry of activity. For many, it was a rare chance to see the army working so close to everyday life, and it carried with it a mixture of intrigue and unease. Hayes paused for a moment near a familiar landmark, the old clock tower that had silently witnessed the city's history for over a century. He surveyed the streets from that vantage point, his eyes scanning for potential issues, imagining how people might react once the drill began. He knew that in any emergency, the first moments were the most critical. Panic could spread like wildfire, turning a controlled situation into chaos. His mind worked quickly, reviewing procedures, assessing routes, and considering the most effective ways to communicate with civilians who had never experienced anything like this before. As he continued walking, Hayes noticed small groups forming around the areas designated for the drill. Volunteers who had signed up days in advance were waiting, some fidgeting with anxiety, others chatting nervously to pass the time. They were ordinary people, students, office workers, parents with young children, all curious about what was about to happen but also somewhat apprehensive. Hayes approached them calmly, offering reassuring words. His tone was steady, warm, and authoritative. He explained the drill in simple terms, making it clear that while it was a simulation, it was an important practice that could one day save lives. He emphasized that everyone's cooperation was essential, not just for the drill's success, but for their own safety. In the midst of this, media crews had begun setting up cameras and microphones. Reporters, eager to capture the city's response to such a rare event, spoke quickly into their equipment, narrating the scene for viewers who were watching from home. Pedestrians occasionally paused to glance at the filming, some waving or smiling at the cameras, while others looked uncertain, unsure of how to react. Hayes paid them no mind. His focus was entirely on preparing everyone for the upcoming exercise. The streets, though still quiet in comparison to a normal morning, buzzed with a subtle energy. Soldiers moved with precision, checking equipment, coordinating with each other through radios, and ensuring that all safety measures were in place. The civilians, sensing the importance of the moment, followed instructions carefully, standing in designated areas and listening intently to briefings. There was a sense of anticipation that was almost tangible, as if the city itself was holding its breath. As the clock edged closer to the start time, Hayes reflected on the broader significance of the drill. It was easy to forget, amid the busy routines of city life, how unpredictable emergencies could be. Fires, accidents, or other unexpected events could strike without warning, and the consequences of being unprepared could be severe. He remembered training exercises from his own early days in the army, where mistakes had taught him lessons that could not be learned from books alone. The importance of readiness, the ability to stay calm, and the responsibility of guiding others were lessons ingrained deeply into his character. Hayes's thoughts were interrupted by a young volunteer, a university student named Clara, who approached him nervously. She had never been part of anything like this before and was unsure if she would remember all the instructions. Hayes knelt down slightly, meeting her gaze, and spoke to her gently but confidently. He reassured her that the drill was designed to be safe, that mistakes were part of learning, and that she would not be alone. Others nearby overheard his calm encouragement, and a ripple of confidence seemed to pass through the group. Even as these interactions unfolded, the city itself seemed to prepare for the drill. Birds took flight from the rooftops, and the faint hum of traffic in the distance seemed to fade as the focus shifted entirely to the drill area. Hayes walked along the designated evacuation path one more time, checking that signs were visible and that barriers were properly positioned. Every detail mattered, he reminded himself silently. Even the smallest oversight could confuse someone unfamiliar with the procedures. By mid-morning, the streets were a mix of ordinary life and heightened alertness. Shopkeepers had paused briefly to watch. Commuters were now paying attention to instructions, and children craned their necks from behind railings to see the soldiers moving efficiently through the city. Hayes moved among them with quiet authority, explaining routes, demonstrating hand signals, and answering questions. His calm, composed demeanor reassured everyone around him, turning potential confusion into a sense of order and safety. As the moment for the drill's commencement approached, Hayes took a deep breath. The city around him, vibrant and historic, would soon become the stage for an exercise that was both practical and symbolic, a demonstration of preparedness, courage, and community cooperation. He glanced at the clock, noting the minutes ticking away, and then back at the volunteers and civilians gathered. He could see a mix of curiosity, excitement, and nervousness in their faces, and he knew that his role was not just to instruct, but to inspire confidence. In that quiet, anticipatory moment, central London seemed to pause. The city had seen many events, both ordinary and extraordinary, but today was different. Today, the streets would witness the careful orchestration of a soldier's knowledge, the disciplined coordination of his team, and the engagement of civilians who were learning the vital importance of preparedness. Hayes straightened his posture, his eyes scanning the crowd, and silently acknowledged the responsibility he carried. In a few moments, the drill would begin, and he would lead by example, showing how courage, calmness, and clear guidance could transform uncertainty into order. And so, in the stillness of that crisp morning, Sergeant Daniel Hayes stood ready, not just as a soldier, but as a guide, a protector, and a symbol of calm authority in the heart of a city that was about to experience an unforgettable lesson in preparedness. The moment had finally arrived. The soft tension that had hung over central London seemed to snap into action as sirens blared, echoing through the streets. The sound was startling at first, causing a few pedestrians to jump and glance around, unsure of what was happening. But Sergeant Daniel Hayes had anticipated this reaction. With steady movements and calm instructions, he guided volunteers and civilians alike, ensuring that everyone understood that this was a drill, not a real emergency. His voice, firm yet reassuring, carried over the noise, cutting through the initial confusion. Smoke machines hidden along the streets released wisps of fog, designed to simulate a dangerous situation. It drifted across the pavements and into small alleys, creating a sense of urgency without endangering anyone. To an untrained eye, it could have looked like a sudden accident or small fire, and Hayes knew that this realism was important. People would only learn the value of proper evacuation if they felt a hint of what a real emergency might feel like. As the fog swirled around them, volunteers instinctively moved closer together, seeking guidance, while some children held tightly to their parents' hands. Hayes stepped forward, moving with a calm authority that seemed to slice through the confusion. He raised his arm, signaling the safest route, and spoke clearly. "Follow the marked path, keep low if the smoke gets thicker, and stay close to the person in front of you. Take your time but move steadily." His instructions were simple but precise, easy for anyone to follow. Those nearby immediately adjusted their movements, some breathing more steadily, others nodding in understanding. The confidence in his voice reassured even those who had been frightened by the sirens and fog. Volunteers began to experience a mix of excitement and nervousness. For some, it was their first encounter with anything resembling an emergency situation, and they struggled to focus amidst the sounds and sights around them. Hayes noticed a young man frozen near a lamppost, his eyes wide with worry. Without rushing him, Hayes approached, placing a gentle hand on the man's shoulder. "You're doing fine," he said calmly. "Just follow my lead. We'll get through this together." The young man's tension eased, and he began moving along the evacuation route, keeping pace with the others. Hayes understood that leadership was as much about calming fears as giving directions. Across the street, a small crowd of onlookers had gathered, curious about the unfolding drill. Many were snapping photos or recording videos on their phones. Hayes paid them no mind. His focus was entirely on the people participating in the exercise. He moved from group to group, demonstrating how to navigate around obstacles, how to stay low when smoke filled the air, and how to remain aware of exits and safe zones. He repeated the instructions patiently, knowing that some people might forget in the heat of the moment. His attention to detail was meticulous, and the calm, deliberate pace reassured everyone around him. The drill was designed to simulate a sudden urban threat, and Hayes made sure it felt real without being dangerous. Volunteers were instructed to react as if the situation were urgent, to follow directions quickly, but also to remain calm. The fog, the sirens, and the controlled commotion created a sense of pressure, but Hayes' composed presence anchored the participants. Even those who had been skeptical at first began to understand the importance of following procedures. One volunteer, a woman named Priya, whispered to a friend, "I didn't think it would feel this real, but he makes it feel manageable." Meanwhile, Hayes' team of soldiers worked alongside him, assisting with the exercise. They guided people through alternative paths, ensured safety equipment was functioning properly, and observed how participants responded to instructions. The coordination between Hayes and his team was seamless. They moved almost silently, yet their presence was noticeable, giving a sense of security without causing panic. The effectiveness of the drill relied on this balance, demonstrating urgency while preventing chaos. As the drill continued, unexpected challenges arose, testing the participants' ability to stay focused. A sudden gust of wind blew some of the smoke into a narrow alley, creating a denser cloud. A group of volunteers hesitated, unsure which way to go. Hayes noticed immediately. He raised his hand and shouted, "Stay calm, follow me." Then, walking steadily through the fog, he led them along the safest route, guiding them back onto the main evacuation path. His actions demonstrated something critical. That leadership in emergencies was not just about giving orders, but about being present, confident, and ready to act when things did not go as planned. Children in particular reacted to the fog and sirens with wide-eyed curiosity and occasional fear. Hayes crouched down to their level, speaking in a calm, gentle tone. He explained that the fog was only smoke from machines, not dangerous, and that they were being guided to safe areas. Slowly, the children began to trust him, holding hands with their parents and following instructions. Hayes smiled briefly at their bravery, knowing that small lessons like these could have a lasting impact on young minds. Learning to remain calm in a controlled drill could one day help them respond effectively in a real emergency. The media crews continued to record, capturing the scene from different angles. Reporters spoke into microphones, narrating the steps of the evacuation and highlighting Hayes' leadership. But despite the cameras and attention, Hayes remained focused on the participants. He moved from one group to another, adjusting instructions as needed, ensuring no one felt left behind or confused. His calm demeanor acted as a stabilizing force amidst the orchestrated chaos, showing that courage was not always loud. It was often quiet, steady, and consistent. As the drill progressed, volunteers began to move more confidently. The initial hesitation and fear gave way to understanding and cooperation. They followed Hayes' instructions without second-guessing, learned how to avoid obstacles, and became more aware of their surroundings. The exercise not only trained them in evacuation procedures, but also taught them the value of trust in leadership, in teamwork, and in their own ability to respond calmly under pressure. Hayes watched with quiet satisfaction. This was more than a drill. It was an opportunity to build confidence and resilience in ordinary people. A particularly tense moment arrived when a small group of participants accidentally veered off the designated path, heading toward a blocked area. Hayes noticed immediately and moved quickly, guiding them back while reassuring the rest of the participants to maintain their pace. His swift and decisive actions prevented potential confusion or accidents. Observers, both participants and bystanders, could see how experience and preparation made a difference. Hayes' ability to stay calm and act decisively was a living lesson in how courage and leadership worked hand in hand. Throughout the drill, Hayes remained approachable. Volunteers and civilians occasionally asked questions, unsure about certain actions or routes. He answered each with patience, repeating instructions when necessary, always ensuring that no one felt embarrassed or overwhelmed. His focus on clarity and empathy set a tone of respect and encouragement, reinforcing the idea that learning, even in stressful situations, could be done safely and effectively. By mid-morning, the drill had achieved more than anyone had expected. Participants were no longer anxious but engaged, following instructions confidently and even helping each other navigate the foggy streets. Hayes' steady leadership had transformed uncertainty into order, fear into understanding. Observers noted how the calm guidance of one experienced soldier could influence the behavior of a whole group, demonstrating the power of composed authority in situations that might otherwise be chaotic. As the simulated exercise neared its conclusion, Hayes gathered participants in a safe zone. He spoke to them about the importance of preparedness, explaining that while emergencies were rare, the ability to respond calmly and follow procedures could make a life-saving difference. He emphasized teamwork, communication, and remaining observant. Participants nodded, some with expressions of pride, others with relief. They had faced simulated fear, followed instructions, and come through safely, gaining confidence they would carry into real-life situations. Finally, Hayes looked around at the streets of central London, now returning to their usual rhythm. Sirens quieted, smoke dissipated, and volunteers slowly dispersed, chatting about what they had learned. Hayes allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. The drill had been a success, but more importantly, it had shown the true value of his role, guiding, teaching, and protecting others, even in controlled simulations. Leadership, he knew, was most meaningful when it inspired confidence, calm, and courage in those around you. As the city continued its day, people carried the lessons of the morning with them, even if only subconsciously. They had witnessed the difference that calm, confident guidance could make, and they had learned how small actions could prevent confusion and keep people safe. And amidst it all, Sergeant Daniel Hayes quietly resumed his duties, ready for the next challenge, knowing that every drill was a chance to strengthen not only preparedness, but also trust and courage. The drill had been going smoothly for most of the morning, and Sergeant Daniel Hayes was quietly satisfied. Volunteers and civilians had followed the instructions well, moving along the designated paths with growing confidence. Children held hands with their parents, young adults moved steadily, and even the initially anxious participants were now more at ease. Hayes, walking alongside the groups, gave occasional guidance, corrected minor mistakes, and offered reassuring words. Everything seemed to be proceeding according to plan, but in real life, no plan ever unfolds perfectly. Just as Hayes was instructing a small group on how to move around an obstacle, a sudden shift of attention revealed a problem. A group of volunteers, perhaps distracted by the fog or overwhelmed by the sirens, had veered off the main path. They were heading toward an area that had been intentionally blocked to simulate danger, and the risk of confusion or panic was growing. Hayes noticed immediately. His trained eyes recognized the early signs of uncertainty, hesitant footsteps, nervous glances, and a subtle slowing of pace. Hayes moved quickly but without panic. He knew that the way he reacted now would set the tone for the group. Raising his voice slightly, he called out, "This way, follow me." His words were clear and firm, cutting through the noise of sirens and the rustle of the fog. As he began moving toward the group, he maintained a calm demeanor, knowing that any sign of worry could spread fear. His steps were deliberate, confident, and unhurried, demonstrating that even in unexpected situations there was a path forward. The group hesitated for a moment, unsure which way to turn. Some participants froze entirely, unsure of what was safe. Hayes slowed down to meet them, bending slightly to make eye contact with the closest volunteers. "It's okay," he said gently. "You're safe. Just follow me. We'll get back on track." His tone was soothing, and the simplicity of his instructions helped the group regain focus. Slowly but steadily, they began to move toward him, following the guidance he provided. Hayes knew that in situations like this, patience was as important as decisiveness. Panicking or rushing the group could have caused a spill or an accident, even in a controlled drill. As they followed him back to the main route, Hayes noticed another issue. The fog machines, which had been placed to simulate danger, had created pockets of thicker smoke in certain areas. Volunteers were finding it difficult to see clearly, some covering their faces instinctively, while others stumbled slightly over uneven pavement. Hayes quickly adjusted, demonstrating how to stay low and use walls or handrails for guidance. He encouraged participants to hold hands with someone in front of them, reinforcing teamwork and safety. With each clear and calm instruction, the group regained confidence and momentum. Meanwhile, the rest of the participants continued along the main route, unaware of the slight deviation that had occurred. Hayes' team of soldiers noticed the change and immediately began assisting, ensuring that the path remained clear and that no one was left behind. Hayes' ability to anticipate problems and act quickly was being put to the test, and he excelled. Each action was measured and deliberate, showing the volunteers how leadership worked in practice, not as a set of abstract rules but as careful observation, rapid response, and clear communication. Among the volunteers, some began to experience fear, even in a controlled environment. One young woman, Sophia, clutched her friend's arm tightly, her eyes wide and trembling slightly as she took in the thickening fog. Hayes knelt beside her briefly, speaking in a calm and reassuring voice. "It's only smoke from the machines," he explained. "You're safe and we're guiding everyone along the correct path. Just take my hand and keep moving." "You're doing perfectly." Sophia nodded slowly, her breathing beginning to steady as she followed his lead. Hayes knew that in emergencies, small gestures of reassurance could have a powerful impact, turning panic into composure. The unexpected challenge also provided an opportunity to teach more advanced aspects of evacuation procedures. Hayes demonstrated how to help someone who might be nervous or struggling, how to guide multiple people through a narrow passage, and how to maintain order in a crowded area. Volunteers were quick to pick up on these lessons, and soon they were helping each other rather than waiting for direction. It was a small but significant shift from following instructions passively to participating actively in maintaining safety. Hayes smiled quietly to himself. This was the kind of learning that mattered most. As they moved through the fog, some children became frightened again. Hayes crouched down to their level, gently pointing out the direction of the safe zones and explaining in simple words that they were surrounded by people who would keep them safe. "See those soldiers," he said. "They are here to help us. Just follow along and you'll be fine." The children nodded, some giggling nervously, others holding tighter to their parents' hands. Their fear was slowly replaced by curiosity and engagement as they experienced firsthand the importance of listening and following guidance. The media crews covering the drill captured every moment of this unexpected challenge. Reporters spoke into their microphones, narrating how Sergeant Hayes had noticed the deviation, acted quickly, and guided the group back safely. Viewers watching from home could see the calm authority in his movements, the patience in his voice, and the trust that participants had begun to place in him. Hayes, however, ignored the cameras, focusing entirely on the people he was leading. To him, the cameras were irrelevant. The safety and learning of the participants were what truly mattered. As the group rejoined the main path, Hayes encouraged them to continue at a steady pace, reminding them to stay aware of their surroundings and to support one another. Volunteers who had initially been hesitant were now moving with confidence, helping their neighbors navigate obstacles and encouraging those who seemed unsure. The transformation was remarkable. What had begun as a moment of fear and confusion had become a demonstration of teamwork, trust, and resilience. Hayes understood that this was the essence of the drill, preparing people not just for emergencies, but for the unexpected twists and challenges that could arise at any moment. Midway through the drill, Hayes noticed another potential issue. A small group had stopped near a corner, unsure of which way to turn. He approached them immediately, raising his voice slightly to ensure they could hear over the background noise. "Follow me," he called. "This way is safe and we'll get back on track together." His confidence was infectious. The group began moving again, following him without hesitation. Hayes knew that decisive action in such moments was critical. Hesitation could lead to panic, even among experienced volunteers. Throughout the drill, Hayes maintained a balance between authority and empathy. He gave instructions firmly, but also recognized the human side of the exercise. He praised participants who had recovered from hesitation, encouraged those who were nervous, and ensured that everyone understood the importance of staying calm. His approach created an atmosphere of trust and cooperation, transforming what could have been a stressful experience into a valuable learning opportunity. By the time the group returned to the main evacuation path, the fog had begun to clear slightly. Volunteers were moving with confidence, children were holding hands without fear, and even the initially hesitant participants were now guiding others. Hayes took a moment to glance back, ensuring that everyone had followed safely. He breathed a quiet sigh of relief. The challenge had been unexpected, but it had been handled effectively. The group had learned how to navigate uncertainty, how to follow leadership, and how to work together under pressure. The drill continued, with Hayes now integrating the lessons learned from the deviation. He reminded participants to stay vigilant, to pay attention to surroundings, and to communicate with those around them. He emphasized that emergencies were unpredictable, and the ability to stay calm and adaptable was just as important as following pre-planned routes. Volunteers nodded, understanding that these skills were not theoretical, they were practical tools that could save lives. As the exercise neared its conclusion, Hayes gathered the group for a brief moment of reflection. He praised their efforts, acknowledging the challenges they had faced and the courage they had shown in responding calmly. Today wasn't just about following instructions, he said. It was about trusting each other, staying calm, and learning to act when things don't go as expected. You've all done that exceptionally well. The volunteers smiled, some laughing nervously, others nodding with pride. They had experienced fear, confusion, and uncertainty, but they had emerged stronger and more confident. The unexpected challenge had become the highlight of the drill. It demonstrated the practical value of preparation, the importance of calm leadership, and the resilience of ordinary people when guided effectively. Hayes' actions had shown that courage was not about being fearless, but about responding decisively and calmly in difficult situations. Observers, both on site and through media coverage, took note. This was leadership in action, a lesson in preparedness that went beyond instructions or manuals. It was living, breathing guidance in the face of unpredictability. Finally, as the fog cleared completely and the drill came to an end, Hayes allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The unexpected challenge had tested both volunteers and soldiers, but the outcome had been successful. Participants had learned to stay calm, work together, and trust in leadership, while Hayes had demonstrated the power of patience, empathy, and decisive action. Central London, once again, returned to its usual rhythm, but the lessons of the morning would linger in the minds of everyone involved. As the drill came to an end, Central London began to return to its usual rhythm. The fog from the machines lifted, sirens were silenced, and volunteers and civilians slowly dispersed from the streets where the exercise had taken place. Shops reopened fully, commuters returned to their routines, and the usual hum of traffic filled the avenues once again. Yet the echoes of the morning lingered. What had started as a simple safety drill had become a powerful demonstration of leadership, courage, and community cooperation. Sergeant Daniel Hayes, standing in the middle of the street, surveyed the scene with quiet satisfaction. Hayes had spent the morning guiding dozens of participants, ensuring that everyone understood and followed evacuation procedures. His calm presence had turned moments of hesitation into lessons in confidence and teamwork. Now, as the drill concluded, it became clear just how much impact those few hours had had. Volunteers were speaking among themselves, sharing stories of moments when they had felt unsure but had been guided safely. Children pointed out what they had learned, repeating key instructions about following routes and staying low in fog or smoke. Even the adults, some of whom had initially approached the exercise with skepticism, acknowledged how useful the experience had been. As Hayes began to walk toward a group of volunteers for a debriefing, local officials and members of the emergency services arrived to observe and evaluate the exercise. They had been watching from a safe distance, taking notes on coordination, participant behavior, and overall efficiency. Their expressions showed approval and interest. The drill had not only tested public awareness, but also the leadership skills of those guiding it. Hayes, though focused and serious, welcomed the attention. He understood that evaluations were an essential part of improving procedures, ensuring that every drill was a step toward greater safety for the city. One of the city's emergency coordinators approached Hayes, shaking his hand firmly. "Sergeant Hayes," he said, "your leadership today was exceptional. The way you managed the unexpected deviation of the group and kept everyone calm was exactly what we hope to see in real emergencies. You've set a high standard." Hayes nodded politely, maintaining his characteristic modesty. "It was a team effort," he replied. "The participants followed instructions well, and my fellow soldiers were excellent in supporting them. That's what makes drills successful." His humility reflected his deep understanding that leadership was never about individual glory. It was about guiding and supporting others effectively. Volunteers gathered nearby, some still chatting animatedly about their experiences. Priya, the young woman who had initially been nervous, approached Hayes with a bright smile. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "At first I was scared and didn't know what to do, but watching how calm and confident you were made me feel safe." "I learned so much today." Hayes smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I'm glad," he said simply. "The goal is to make sure everyone knows how to stay safe and help each other." "You did very well." Her words reflected a sentiment shared by many of the participants. They had gained not just knowledge of evacuation procedures, but also confidence in their ability to respond calmly in challenging situations. Meanwhile, local media had begun interviewing some of the participants, capturing their reflections on the exercise. Reporters highlighted Hayes' calm and authoritative presence, emphasizing how his leadership had transformed what could have been a stressful situation into a controlled, educational experience. News outlets praised the drill as a successful example of community engagement and emergency preparedness. Yet, throughout the interviews and attention, Hayes remained focused on the people he had guided, ensuring that every participant felt recognized and safe. He did not seek personal recognition. For him, the value lay in the learning experience and the safety of everyone involved. As the morning continued, Hayes took a moment to reflect on the significance of what had transpired. Drills like these were often seen as routine or procedural, but they carried real lessons. Emergencies were unpredictable, and panic could spread quickly. By demonstrating calm leadership, providing clear instructions, and guiding participants through unexpected challenges, Hayes had shown that preparation, presence of mind, and empathy were as important as any technical skill. Each volunteer, child, and adult who had taken part had witnessed firsthand how effective leadership could make a difference in critical moments. In the midst of this reflection, a small group of schoolchildren approached Hayes, their faces glowing with curiosity and admiration. One of them, a boy named Leo, asked eagerly, "Sergeant Hayes, were you ever scared when the group got lost?" Hayes crouched to meet the boy's gaze, choosing his words carefully. "I've been in many situations where things didn't go as planned," he explained. "But being scared doesn't mean you can't act. The important part is staying calm, thinking clearly, and helping others. That's what we practiced today." The children nodded, absorbing the lesson. Their enthusiasm reminded Hayes that teaching safety was not just about adults. It was about building a culture of preparedness that could grow from a young age. As the day progressed, city officials gathered for a formal debriefing. Hayes presented a detailed report on the drill, explaining how the exercise had unfolded, what challenges had arisen, and how they had been addressed. He highlighted moments when volunteers had initially struggled and how calm guidance had helped them regain confidence. His insights were clear, practical, and grounded in experience. The officials listened attentively, asking questions and taking notes. Hayes' ability to translate real-life action into lessons and recommendations made the drill not only a learning experience for participants, but also a valuable resource for the city's future emergency planning. During the debriefing, one official remarked on the impact Hayes' calm demeanor had on the participants. "It's remarkable how one person's composure can influence an entire group," he said. "You showed them not just what to do, but how to stay calm under pressure." That's a lesson they will carry with them far beyond today. Hayes responded modestly, emphasizing teamwork and preparation over individual recognition. It's the training, the planning, and the willingness of participants to follow instructions that make the difference, he said. Leadership is guiding, not commanding. Everyone played their part. After the formalities, Hayes took time to speak personally with volunteers and civilians. He asked for their feedback, listened to their concerns, and encouraged questions. Many shared their experiences of initial fear, how they had learned to stay calm, and what they would remember if a real emergency occurred. Some participants admitted they had underestimated the value of drills before experiencing one firsthand. Hayes acknowledged their honesty and explained that learning through practice was far more effective than theoretical instruction alone. His approach created a sense of trust and mutual respect, leaving a lasting impression on those who had participated. The recognition Hayes received from the city, the media, and the volunteers was humbling, but he remained focused on the larger purpose. The drill had achieved more than procedural success. It had inspired confidence, demonstrated practical leadership, and strengthened the community's understanding of safety. Hayes reflected on how ordinary people, when guided correctly, could rise to challenges, overcome fear, and act responsibly. He understood that courage was not always dramatic. It often manifested quietly, through steady guidance, reassurance, and careful decision-making. By mid-afternoon, the streets of central London had mostly returned to normal. Volunteers left with a sense of accomplishment, children recounted the lessons they had learned, and officials reviewed notes for improvements in future exercises. Hayes, while physically tired from the morning's activity, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The drill had tested him as a leader and tested the participants' ability to respond under pressure. The lessons learned, the confidence gained, and the calm collaboration he had witnessed would resonate far beyond the day itself. As he walked back toward his station, Hayes noticed small gestures of appreciation from the public. People who had watched the drill from a distance nodded or waved, some whispering to their companions about how impressive the drill had been. Hayes offered polite smiles in return, acknowledging the support without seeking personal attention. For him, the true reward was the knowledge that participants had learned. The city had gained valuable insights, and the importance of preparedness had been reinforced for everyone involved. Finally, Hayes took a quiet moment alone, reflecting on the morning's events. He thought about the challenges, the moments of hesitation, and the successful navigation of obstacles. He considered the lessons learned, not just by the participants, but by himself as well. Leadership, he realized, was a continuous journey of observation, patience, and action. Courage was not always visible. It was in the calm decisions, the gentle reassurance, and the steady guidance that allowed others to act safely and confidently. The day had begun with uncertainty, progressed through moments of tension, and concluded with achievement and reflection. For Sergeant Daniel Hayes, the drill was a reminder of the impact one person could have when they led with calm authority, empathy, and careful attention. Central London returned to its usual rhythm, but the lessons of the morning would linger, not just in the memories of those who participated, but in the city's ongoing commitment to safety, preparedness, and the quiet courage that Hayes had exemplified so effectively. The weeks following the Central London drill were filled with quiet but meaningful changes across the city. While the streets themselves had returned to their usual pace and routine, the impact of that morning lingered in subtle but powerful ways. People who had participated in the exercise carried a new sense of confidence, while city officials and emergency coordinators began incorporating lessons learned into broader safety plans. Sergeant Daniel Hayes, meanwhile, returned to his regular duties, but the events of the drill continued to ripple through the lives of everyone involved. Hayes' actions during the drill had become a topic of conversation not just among the volunteers, but within the wider community. Local news outlets highlighted his calm leadership and the way he had guided participants safely through unexpected challenges. Social media buzzed with videos and photos from the event, many of them showing Hayes directing the flow of people with steady authority. The public's reaction was overwhelmingly positive. People praised not just the drill itself, but the way a single individual could inspire confidence, calm, and trust. Hayes, however, remained modest, quietly deflecting attention to the importance of teamwork and preparation. In schools across the city, teachers began integrating emergency preparedness lessons inspired by the drill. Children who had attended or heard about the exercise were encouraged to practice safe evacuation techniques, follow instructions in mock scenarios, and understand the importance of staying calm. Many students spoke about Sergeant Hayes with admiration, noting how his composure had turned a frightening situation into a manageable experience. Parents, too, discussed the value of the lessons learned, recognizing that preparedness was not just a professional responsibility, but a civic one. Hayes' influence had extended far beyond the drill itself, planting seeds of awareness and responsibility in the community. Meanwhile, city officials held a series of meetings to review the drill and its outcomes. Hayes was invited to provide input on the successes and challenges observed. He spoke about the importance of clear communication, the role of empathy in leadership, and the need to prepare for unexpected complications. His suggestions were practical, detailed, and informed by first-hand experience. Officials took careful notes, recognizing that Hayes' calm authority and quick thinking had provided lessons that could not be learned from manuals or training videos alone. His presence had turned a routine drill into a case study in effective emergency management. The participants themselves carried stories of personal growth. Volunteers who had initially been anxious shared how the drill had changed their perspective. Some spoke about learning to stay calm under pressure, others about trusting instructions from leaders and peers alike. Even those who had come simply out of curiosity realized that the experience had given them a practical skill set they might need one day. Children recounted the importance of holding hands, following directions, and remaining aware of their surroundings. Parents praised their kids for their bravery, while educators celebrated the real-world lessons that could not be taught in a classroom alone. Hayes' guidance had left a lasting impression on all of them. One morning, a month after the drill, Hayes received a letter from a local school principal. The letter expressed gratitude for his role in the drill and described how students had embraced emergency preparedness lessons, inspired by Hayes' calm leadership. The principal wrote that children were now more confident in their ability to respond to unexpected events, and that teachers were able to use examples from the drill to teach responsibility and teamwork. Hayes read the letter quietly, a sense of quiet pride filling him. It was recognition, yes, but more importantly, it was proof that his efforts had real, positive effects on the lives of ordinary people. In his daily routine, Hayes continued training with his team, preparing for other drills and real-life situations. Yet he carried with him the lessons learned from the Central London exercise. He knew that courage was not measured only in extraordinary acts during crises but in everyday decisions. Staying calm, giving clear instructions, anticipating problems, and supporting others. His own understanding of leadership deepened as he reflected on how ordinary citizens, when guided with patience and clarity, could respond remarkably well under pressure. The drill had reinforced the idea that preparation and guidance were as essential as bravery in emergencies. Community organizations began to take notice, inviting Hayes to share his experiences and offer guidance for local safety initiatives. Neighborhood watch groups, parent associations, and even local businesses sought advice on evacuation procedures and emergency readiness. Hayes approached each engagement with the same calm authority he had shown during the drill. He spoke simply, clearly, and with empathy, ensuring that his audience understood the importance of preparedness without feeling alarmed. His reputation as a leader who combined practical knowledge with patience and care grew steadily, inspiring others to act responsibly and proactively in their own communities. In addition to these engagements, Hayes began mentoring younger soldiers, sharing not only technical skills but also lessons in leadership and composure. He emphasized that drills were not just exercises. They were opportunities to practice patience, empathy, and the ability to remain calm when things did not go as planned. Hayes encouraged them to observe how ordinary people reacted under pressure and to learn how subtle guidance could make a significant difference. Through these interactions, he helped cultivate a new generation of soldiers who valued leadership that was practical, calm, and compassionate. Over time, the drill's impact became evident in small but meaningful ways. Local businesses reviewed and improved their emergency plans, schools conducted regular practice evacuations, and families discussed safety measures at home. People spoke about the lessons they had learned from the drill in conversations with friends and colleagues. Hayes' approach to leadership had shown them that courage was not about heroics or dramatic gestures, but about steady, thoughtful action and the ability to inspire trust in others. His influence extended far beyond a single day, shaping a culture of preparedness and resilience that would endure for years to come. Even Hayes himself noticed subtle changes in the city. Streets felt more organized during peak hours, as volunteers and staff who had participated in the drill demonstrated greater awareness. Communities communicated better about safety and emergency readiness, and local schools reported that children were more confident in responding to instructions. Hayes realized that the ripple effect of a single well-executed drill could be far-reaching. What had started as a controlled exercise in central London had grown into a movement of awareness, preparation, and calm courage. Despite all the recognition, Hayes remained humble. He continued his duties without seeking personal accolades, focusing on the importance of teamwork and shared responsibility. To him, the drill had been successful not because of media coverage or praise, but because people had learned, adapted, and grown more confident. Leadership, he understood, was measured in the quiet moments, guiding a nervous child, reassuring a hesitant adult, and demonstrating calm in the face of uncertainty. These moments, repeated and multiplied, created lasting impact. Months after the drill, Hayes received an invitation to speak at a citywide emergency preparedness seminar. He addressed a diverse audience, including community leaders, educators, emergency responders, and civilians. Hayes spoke about the importance of drills, the lessons learned from the Central London exercise, and the power of calm, confident leadership. He emphasized practical steps, clear communication, preparation, empathy, and adaptability. Attendees listened attentively, many taking notes and asking questions, eager to apply these lessons in their own organizations and neighborhoods. Hayes' influence continued to spread, reinforcing the idea that courage and leadership could manifest in simple, consistent actions. As he returned home that evening, Hayes reflected on the long-term significance of the drill. What had begun as a single exercise had become a lasting lesson in courage, responsibility, and the importance of preparedness. People were now better equipped to respond to emergencies, communities were more organized, and children had learned practical skills they could carry throughout their lives. Hayes understood that true impact was measured not in recognition or headlines, but in the subtle, enduring changes that improved the safety and confidence of others. In the quiet of his home, Hayes allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The drill had been a success, not because it had gone perfectly, but because it had achieved its true purpose, teaching ordinary people how to respond to uncertainty, building trust and teamwork, and demonstrating that calm, thoughtful leadership could guide many through challenging situations. The city had learned, the community had benefited, and Hayes had once again seen how courage and guidance, when applied wisely, could create lasting change. Even as life in London moved forward, the memory of that day remained vivid for those who had participated. People recalled the fog, the sirens, the careful guidance of Sergeant Hayes, and the moments of hesitation that had been transformed into lessons in courage and calm. The drill had become more than an exercise. It had become a symbol of the power of preparedness, the importance of clear guidance, and the lasting impact of steady, compassionate leadership. For Sergeant Daniel Hayes, the story of that day would remain a quiet but meaningful chapter in his life. It was a reminder that courage was often measured not in grand gestures, but in calm decisions, careful guidance, and the ability to inspire confidence in others. The drill had shown him, and the city, that ordinary people, when led with patience and clarity, could rise to challenges with remarkable composure. And in that realization lay the enduring legacy of one powerful act of courage, carried forward in the lives of all those who had witnessed it.